Hi, this is Chris Smith, and this is a chalk and talk about Twitter for beginners, for starters, for Project Gandhi. The objectives of this training are specifically just to kind of reiterate some things about the social media policy for this particular pilot. I'm going to try to introduce you to some basic concepts through exploring the user interface of Twitter to kind of give you some idea of the terms and some of the key things that you need to know about Twitter to get going, and also give you some information that might help you when you come to decide how you set your particular Twitter account up. Okay, so without further ado, there's some stuff which is business as usual. This is a project which is a professional pilot, which it's a learning exercise, but it is professional nevertheless. So a kind of business as usual. All of the stuff about it is going to be in the public domain in the sense that we are going to be using publicly available tools. Information will be placed in the public domain, and therefore also, because it's on the internet, it will be permanent in the sense that people could take screenshots today and come back and talk about them in 3-4 years time or whatever. So I guess we're reiterating stuff that you would already know as professionals, that it's about respecting the confidentiality, respecting in your discussions and any other information you put out there. We would particularly ask you to be avoiding getting drawn into discussions or commenting on policy or politics. And usually, I guess this kind of thing you would say would be, this is really only an extension of how you would be conducting yourself as a professional in the public domain, whether it's employees, whether it's colleagues, or the greater general public as a matter of course. So it is really business as usual, and we're accepting, though it is a pilot, and we're going to have to learn some lessons on the way. So particularly importantly, getting down to Twitter itself, there are some key things that you have to understand about Twitter. The first thing is that it's a microblog. So in a tweet, which is your entry on the blog, there's 140 characters. It's a bit like SMS, and indeed it has its own kind of language. And as you get into it, you'll start to understand that there are stylistic and other devices that you can actually use. But at this stage, here's the key points to remember. The usernames are actually identified by an @ So, for example, Lady Gaga is at Lady Gaga. I'm at Chris G_Smith. Also, the concept of that you can tag things or label things of interest using what's called the hashtag. This allows you to put topics that might be of interest to numbers of people in a way that they can search using the powerful engines of Twitter to follow communities of interest and topics. So, for example, one right now in Scotland, as you'd be kind of unsurprisingly, is #IndieRef. That's been going around. The other concept to think about is, as much as you're microblogging, is that it's about sharing information, and in many ways you're connecting with people. Therefore, this idea of you'll see a lot of things which go RT or retweeting. It's the Twitter equivalent of the email thing of resending stuff. The other thing to remember is that this is about building a network. Therefore, there are going to be followers and follows. So you'll need to get into this idea that you're going to follow people, but at the same time, you're going to be building an audience of followers as well. So what I thought I would do is just take a particular screen and just kind of run through it and say, this is my own Twitter account. So I'm going to run through this in anti-clockwise fashion. Essentially, the user interface is 2 columns. The left-hand column which has got profile. It's also got the suggestions of who to follow and the trending, and we'll start to use this word trending, which is the equivalent of, for those of us of a certain age, will be like top of the pops. It's the hit parade. It's the things which are important, and the way that's delineated is by its popularity within here on the right hand side, where the action is. This is where all the tweets actually go on. This is the place where the things that you follow and put up yourself actually start to appear in like a continuing news stream, live stream of information. So essentially, let's maybe look through these panels one by one in a little bit more detail. So top left hand side, that was profile. And basically what it does, it tells me the number of people I'm actually following, and importantly, the number of people who are actually following me as followers. So it gives you some idea of what popularity and so on. It's not necessarily always a numbers game, because it's the importance of the audience that you're wanting to build rather than just being a mass market. Equally, the panel beneath that, which is about who to follow. Now, for example, here that Twitter is always trying to make connections with you. So, for example, in this case, as you'll see, Nike Golf think I should follow them, and they promoted themselves to me. And the little blue highlighted word there, I can click through and follow that directly. In the movie that will accompany this, I'll go through in a little bit detail of showing you how you follow and people and so on. But just gives you an idea that following is a key concept. And equally, the bottom panel on the left-hand side, we were talking about the top of the pops, the things that are actually popular, delineated by two types. The first one is that there is this use of the hashtag. So, for example, at the top there's hashtag Stop Coney, which is a trending or popular hashtag which has been, people have put into their tweets when they've been retweeting. They've retweeted hashtag Stop Coney, and a number of them have done that in sufficient quantities to actually put it at the top. But equally, you'll see that there are some without hashtags, and this is just simply that Twitter picks up the popularity of particular words and phrases. So, for example, visible children is aligned to the hashtag Stop Cody, so not unnaturally has appeared at the top of the hit parade here as well. Now, I thought what I would do is I would take the screen that we saw, which is the right-hand side tweet live stream, and I would just take a couple of tweets here, one from the Scottish Government, to unpick, and I'm going to use the Christine McElvey tweet as well, but I'll just unpick this. So what you would see on a stream would be the tweet from somebody you're following, the Scottish Government in this particular case, and they identify themselves with a little profile picture, as you can see, and the names and their address. They also, in terms of the body text, they've actually said that it's Alex Salmon comments on the GERS figures, and there's another link, and there's a little hashtag at the end of it, which is the hashtag that you've come across previously. So, first thing is they identify Alex Salmon, so you know who that actually is, and here's a link to some content, some internet-based content. It looks like it's a YouTube video here, embedded inside the tweets, and as we said, it's a hashtag. So in a number of different ways, they've pushed this out to potentially three audiences: people who follow Alex Salmon, people who like to look at videos, and people who are following hashtag IndieRef. So it gives you an idea of how much information can be packed into a simple tweet. Similarly with Christine McElvey here, she's done something different. She's talking about largely the same subject, which is the GERS report, and she's gone to a level of detail by actually hashtagging GERS. So that means that immediately anybody following GERS, but not necessarily Alex Salmon or the Scottish Government, will be picking this up. So you get two bangs for your buck, if you like. And equally, there's what we talked about, resending stuff. You can see here that it's actually been retweeted by someone already. So that's Shona Robson has actually picked up this particular tweet from Christina, and she's put it out to her followers. So in particular, for example, if you drill down into the next level and you say you actually clicked on Christine McElvey's tweet here, you'd actually see that this would be what would appear for you. So you can see the number of retweets. And if you look right at the bottom, you've got the opportunity there to actually reply. So this would mean that you would actually send a reply directly back down to Christina. Important part of replying to her would be that this would go go directly to her and be open to everybody else who followed her or followed the particular topic. So it would be a public reply rather than what we're going to talk about, DMing or direct messaging, which is a more private way of doing it. But the idea is that this would be something that you could actually do where you might maybe want to get a conversation thread going with Christina around that particular topic, as an example. Now, you could actually just simply do a retweet, which is forwarding it on to all of your followers, because this information looks like it's particularly interested for men, women, children in Scotland, or anybody who's interested in £510 or whatever. Retweeting will actually be is something that you'll get involved with because you'll be passing on relevant information. And what you would see on this screen would simply be that it would retweet and the numbers would increment and your picture would appear alongside shown at the bottom there. Now, moving along quickly along, we're talking about setting up a Twitter account. We need to think about when we're setting up a profile, just the same way you've seen people, organisations describe themselves very clearly, Scottish Government or individuals describe themselves as MSPs or whatever. Important thing is to remember when we're thinking about an account, because there's quite a few people who've got surnames like Smith, MacDonald, Douglas, whatever, you need to be yourself and clearly identify yourself as yourself because it's going to be personal in that respect. So you need to think about, is a photo appropriate, whatever. Equally, you need to describe your interests fairly clearly so that you just don't appear like a random. At the same time, I think you need to be transparent in the sense that you need to have interests that you're can be seen as being following, but also interests that you might be proactively producing as well. And the other thing we would always be looking at in a profile is to have some sort of legitimacy, because you don't want to be a random troll out there. Now I'm going to show you my particular profile. It gives you an example. I'm not saying this is the best. It works for me, it may not work for you. This is my profile, and this is how I would actually appear. The picture, because I'm that kind of character, a rather fetching red hat, which actually is my mother-in-law's, but that's more of that later. I'm trying to describe myself in less than 160 characters, which Twitter gives you to do. And I've said here I'm a digital media enthusiast. I'm a keen green with a small g. Accuracy is all important in this field. And on the side of the underdog, generally, Vectors in exile. It's a little in-joke for me. So just trying to describe what kind of person I am and what kind of interest I would be likely to be following or follow. Equally, ask for a location. I've been sufficiently vague to stop people turning up on my door, so I've said the south side of the Tay. And for legitimacy, what I've actually put up is my own website or blog. Now, I appreciate at this stage, in the account setup and everything else we're doing here, we haven't gone as far as to set up blogs for us all, and indeed we might be thinking through that that be the hook of legitimacy. But it's to try and give you an idea of that would make more or less a fairish profile for you to actually look at. So I hope that's given you a starter for 10. Where I am going to put up a little movie where I'm going to go through a narrated play around with Twitter and show you some of the key concepts. The point of putting this together as a kind of narrated PowerPoint slide presentation is simply that you can go back to the beginning and go through this in more detail and repeat endlessly if you have a mind to. Thanks again for listening, and we'll be getting on with that film just straight away.